let's kind of start with Venezuela and with these boats. Like, how is this tied, the narco terrorists, the drug traffickers, how is this tied to the Venezuelan government officials? Because from what I have been reading and researching, it seems that it's not just autonomous entities that are the drug cartels. It seems that they are either sponsored or maybe run by Maduro and his pals.
Yeah, so the narco element of this, and we'll get to the terrorism part later, which is a very important specification on this. But the narco part has been going on in Venezuela that goes all the way up to the government. I would say, well, since I've been looking at it, it could be earlier than that, but since at least like the mid 2000s, like 2010, around then. The terrorism part started around 2011. But again, we'll get to that later. But the way that Venezuela works, kind of crazy. It's incredibly corrupt, as you would expect from a socialist government. But the way that it works is it works with a bunch of different municipalities that kind of run under the command of, I think they're called collectivos, collectives. And the government official will be in charge of the region. But then there's also these gangs that work with the permission of the specific head, like a governor or mayor or whatever. They work directly for them to police, to jump on their motorcycles and make sure all the dissent protesters show up. They run over there, squash it. Military and police official don't even have to get involved. But they're all working through approval of the government, sometimes direct coordination. Tren de Agua has been known to operate in very similar ways, but
like under the sanction of Venezuelan government officials,
under the direct sanction of Colombia or Venezuelan officials. That's how the drug cartels work as well, and that's how they make money. So when so the cartel of the Suns, that is not really an official like named cartel. That's just a nickname that was given out, I think, by U.S. officials when they were tracking how all of this works, and it always went straight to like a Venezuela high-ranking general. So the sun stands for this. Instead of stars on their shoulders, they have sun insignia. So the cartel of the Suns is the cartel of the high-ranking generals, basically, which also get their direct orders from, back then it was Hugo Chavez, now it's Nicolas Maduro. So all of them are getting kickbacks. All of them are giving, at the very least, approval to allow these things to go on, or direct involvement in it and orders and things like that, so that they can benefit and profit from these, drug profits and everything they do. So they load up the boats. I think the CIA has been operating there for a very long time. We keep on hearing, it seems like every other week, that the Trump administration had greenlit CIA operations. It was like a story came out about that like a month ago. Then like a week ago, another story came out and said, yeah, greenlit CIA. No kidding. It's been going on there for a long time. Wait a minute.
Explain that though. So when you say there's CIA operations down there, what does that mean? Do you mean that they've infiltrated the gangs? Do you think are they partnering with the gangs and profiting? Like, explain that, because I know there's a lot of CIA conspiracies, some of which are true and some of which aren't. And I just explain exactly what you mean.
Well, I think that could be as bad as we could probably imagine it, because it has been as bad as we can imagine it everywhere else. I know specifically, well, I don't know specifically, but my assumption is that this is primarily involved with human assets on the ground that they are running on the ground that will be able to tell them when shipments are going out, whether that involves terrorism, all the way down the line, and where orders are going on. So when they are targeting these specific drug boats, because they have human elements on the ground that are saying, okay, the boats were loaded, it left this dock, it's now rolling out in the Caribbean as we speak, and then that's when they strike.
Okay, so in this case, it would not be a nefarious CIA operation. It would just be, we have assets on the ground so that we have intel on what's going on.
Well, yeah, I think there are nefarious CIA operations going on there, but very specifically because a lot of people have asked me, how do they even know there's drugs on these boats? There's very specific human intelligence that I think is ran through CIA. That's the way they're able to tell that these are drug, boats. Also could have terrorists. They haven't been telling us that as well, but I think that's involved along with it. But who knows? I feel like every 4 years there's some random coup attempt in Venezuela that gets squashed. Somehow mysteriously a few Americans end up getting caught up in it. Who knows what the CIA is doing in Venezuela? I'm sure it's been going on for a while.
Essentially, it could be that the CIA is there not only to get intel, but to try to foment a color revolution, which is their specialty.
Sure. Yeah, I would not doubt it at all. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's what the CIA specializes in, right? That's why when we see this Seditious Six, it's like, well, they have intel backgrounds, they have CIA backgrounds. This is what they know, color revolutions. Yeah. Okay, so talk to me then about this engagement with these with these boats. I used the word before narco terrorists, and you separated them. You said let's talk narco and then let's talk terrorism. So delineate that for me. Is there a difference in the groups, the narco terrorists and the terrorists, or why separate the two?
So they're calling them narco terrorists, which I think because everything kind of facilitates and all the money kind of goes into one pot. And the Venezuelan government is involved in both narcotics. They're also involved in terrorism. I've seen a lot of people criticize me when I've said this before, like this sounds like another weapons of mass destruction, in Iraq type thing. And I get it. I get that criticism because we've been duped before. Let's not be duped again. But this has been known for a very, very, very long time. And it's actually been public. We just haven't really talked about it. And the media hasn't really been talk about it. Why? Because a lot of this began under their hero worship of Hugo Chavez. When he was coming in, you had people like Sean Penn going over and and bowing down and kissing the ring, and everyone just loved Hugo Chavez because it was going to be amazing. And then later people would be starving to death, over under their policies. They kind of seem to leave that out and forget about it. But under Hugo Chavez, in around 2011, Hugo Chavez brought in the craziest terrorists from all over the world. He called it the Secret Summit. If you can believe that. It was leaders from Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, brought them all under one group there in I guess the presidential palace there in Venezuela, in Caracas. And they had a meeting about what? We're not too sure. But what we do know now is that Hezbollah gained a permanent foothold in Venezuela. There's actually an island. There's an island off the coast of Venezuela, which kind of brings a new meaning to Pirates of the Caribbean. These are the terrorists of the Caribbean. It's called Margarita Island, and they have training camps. We know exactly where they are. This is all congressional testimony, by the way. So you can read about this in congressional testimony, which is wild to me that the media hasn't picked this up. But they are training Hezbollah terrorists on this island inside Venezuela. And in some cases, they're sending them back to Iran to get further on training. They come back to Venezuela, and then they get shipped out into the rest of South America, and then eventually on to the United States, assuming probably. They are, in the true definition, terrorists. And they're all benefiting off this drug money in the same way it's worked out in Afghanistan, how the terrorists were benefiting off of drug money there. Same thing is happening in Venezuela. So I understand the hesitance when we talk about regime change. I don't like that either. There's so many ways regime change could go wrong. But there is a precedent for doing all of this. And the reason why they're doing it, because there's an actual terrorist threat to the mainland. So the question is now, what do they do about it? So right now, the Trump administration is using I think there's a historical precedent why they're going the drug route. And it seems to be Panama. That's what it kind of seems like. The 89 case against Noriega, we had a U.S. indictment on Noriega. We now have a U.S. indictment on Maduro. Both indictments are shockingly similar, Liz. They talk about the narcotics trafficking, all that. It's very similar. The precedent is set up to do the same thing we did then with the invasion and deposing of Noriega. It's there. I think that's just a scare tactic, personally. I don't think they're going to go in and do that. I hope not. But the precedent is there to at least freak him out. But they do have it. Everyone knows that they're running Hezbollah terrorists out of Venezuela. They know that the drug problem is fueling all of that. And there's the proxy war element. Back in 1989 in Panama, it was Libya, it was Cuba, and at an extension, the Soviet Union. Today, there's the proxy war element of Russia, China. Venezuelan oil goes to fuel China's machine all the time. Russia sends Russian tankers over to Venezuela to fuel up the oil tankers and bring it onto China. It's so much larger than what we're being told. I think we should just be told all these. Let the American people decide what we do want out of this. What is the alternative? We haven't really been given all that information.
Yeah, I think this is so interesting because it does change perspective on military actions when you know the background of what's going on. Mm-hmm. So when you're describing Hezbollah terrorists being trained on the island in Venezuela, Margarita Island, what a creepy name for that. If they're training terrorists, these are Islamist terrorists, right?
Yes. Well, they're being trained by Islamic terrorists. So, actually, yeah, there are Islamic terrorists because they actually do have deputies that are on the ground. So, and what's crazy too, if you look up this testimony, which I can tweet out later, but when you look through the testimony, they've actually got the places inside Margarita Island where the lieutenants are living, where the training camps are. Like, all of this stuff is out there. So I don't know why they don't just publish it more. Like, just let everyone know what's going on. But yes, some of them are Islamic terrorists.
Would you suspect that some of the terrorists who have been trained there are in the United States now?
I don't think how you can doubt that. I don't see it. Many of our enemies know they cannot fight a conventional war with the United States. Maduro knows this. Every country in the world knows you cannot fight a conventional war with the United States at this point in time and win it. You just can't do it. So they look for non-conventional ways.
I wonder if the Trump administration has intel, as you said, that hasn't been shared with us, and maybe it should be shared with us. I mean, I'm always in favor of transparency, although I understand that if you're running an operation, sometimes you can't tell your constituents because then the enemy also knows what you're doing and what you're basing your decisions on. But I wonder if they have intel that some of these terrorists are here and that's their impetus to say, like, okay, this is the moment that we act, and we go after the boats as a signal to try to prevent a larger escalation. Is that a plausible strategy in your mind?
The crazy thing is I think that's very plausible. And I think that's probably been our reality for a long time. I remember this was during the Biden administration when FBI Director Wray said that the warning lights have never been stronger for a major terror attack right now. Now, he was basing that off of some information that he never made public. He wouldn't go into it further. But they know. They know not only the people that they have actually labeled and fingered, people that could have been, trainees from Margarita Island or somewhere else that just walked across the border. Who knows? But they know that besides the people they've actually fingered, there's thousands of gotaways that they could be setting up, sleeper cells all over the United States. We just don't know. The crazy thing is that, like the Afghan attack in D.C. last week really is just a warning. As horrific as that was, nothing compared to what we have set ourselves up for. It's nothing. That is just a warning to a larger threat that we're looking at. And my fear is we're not really taking it seriously. I think that maybe going fully into the reasons why what we're doing in Venezuela is so important might wake some people up to that. And I'm not saying that's regime change. Regime change. I don't really know I don't know what the alternative is and how you fix it. But regime change even carries so much more like let's say you depose Maduro. Well, then he still has a huge army who are still loyal to him. Yeah. So what's going to happen? What we know when you just get rid of the military, we saw what happens in Iraq. What happens to then? You get massive sectarian warfare. You get a worse terror threat. I mean, it never ends well. So I'm not exactly sure what the solution is.
Yeah, well, that's the conundrum, I think, because I can only think of one regime change, and you can correct anybody listening and watching right now can chime in the comment section and let me know if I'm missing one. But the only regime change in my lifetime that I can think of that was successful was the Soviet Union, and that was like a while ago in a little bit different situation. But all the Middle Eastern ones, I mean, it's just resulted in disaster. Look what happened in Iraq. Look what happened in Libya. The track record here for the neocons is not good. It does point to they want forever wars. They want to profit. They don't care how long our troops are at war or how many people get killed. They're just bloodthirsty. They just want to go to war. I have to say, I do trust President Trump, though, and his instincts on foreign policy, because if there is one aspect of his presidency, this was true in his first term and this term, that he has been, in my opinion, impeccable on, it's been foreign policy. Like, Trump knows what he's doing with foreign policy. He knows how to negotiate. He knows how to create peace deals. And those watching the show know that I don't just lightly give out I trust somebody in politics. Usually I'm like, okay, sure, I might trust you, but why don't you show me the evidence to help me trust you? And in this case, I have to say, like, it would be awfully out of character for Trump to do something like start a forever war or fall into a regime change trap that results in, neocons profiting, when every single thing he said and done for 2 terms has shown his commitment to the opposite.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there is a Trump doctrine for a lot of these things. Like, he does not want to get into a forever war. He doesn't even want to use the military hardly at all. But the Trump doctrine, we've seen this going back to North Korea back during his first term. He masses a large force. He intimidates. He talks boastful, talks big, and eventually gets them to back down. That's the Trump doctrine. Now, if that doesn't work, he usually pulls back and tries something else, usually something along the lines of sanctions or trade or something like that. But there's never an invasion or something like that. So I think a lot of this is following exactly in line with the Trump doctrine. We'll see where it goes. But I mean, you talk about ramification. I mean, I've seen a lot of people, you talk about, Trump's foreign policy. I've seen a lot of people criticize Donald Trump for maybe spending too much time on foreign policy and not looking inward at like the economy and stuff like that. The problem is that they're so incredibly linked at the moment. So you can't continue to go the way we were going, the way we were spending tons and tons of money, deficits, everything. We were spiraling down a hole and there was no way to get out. He's trying something different with the tariffs and everything. I don't know if that's the right way. I don't know if it's going to work, but at least he's trying something different. Now, wrapped up in all of that, on the eve of this incredible technological change we're about to have through AI and robotics and everything, he's got to somehow basically remake global trade and the financial system. So he's concentrating on these areas that we're weak at. So like China, but China and Russia's influence are also in South America and places like Venezuela. You can see a lot of these things come together and a lot of the dots connect. He's trying to remake the global financial system. He's got to do it through international trade and through foreign policy if we are going to survive this huge technological change. All of that's wrapped up into one big boat.
If you could ask the Trump administration like one or two or three questions that you feel like would give you and me and everybody with us, the American people, a little more insight into what this operation is truly about, what would you ask them?
I think to start, I would ask the very first question you asked me when we started this was, can you at least explain how the Venezuelan government is involved in the overall, narco trafficking? Just explain that. So if you explain why it's called the Cartel of the Suns, if you can explain how far that goes, if you can show that Nicolas Maduro, if not just gives approval to that, but also gives orders, that would go a long way. Now, once you get to that and you understand that, then you can say, well, now tell me the terrorism part. What was discussed in congressional testimony, which everyone knows behind closed doors, it doesn't really talk about. For some strange reason, the media doesn't make a huge deal of this. Talk about the Iranian terrorists being trained in Margarita Island. Let's talk about that. Then you can connect the drug money to the terrorism. Then you can talk about the other threats that you talked about that we haven't heard about or don't know about. Are these people even in the United States? Then it becomes a direct threat to the homeland. So now we have an actual reason to support this if that's what they are doing. And what this is, I'd like to know what this is. Is it, they've hinted at regime change. Is that what it is? I'm not saying I'm going to support that, because if you get rid of Maduro, you still have his army, you get rid of all of it, then you have millions of Venezuelans that can go completely awry. And we've never seen that, as you pointed out. We've never seen that.
Right. That just becomes a vacuum for terrorism. Again, we saw that in Libya and Iraq. You can't depose someone and not put in a new government. But if you put in a new government, it just hasn't historically worked. Interestingly, though, speaking of regime change, there was a report on November 21st from Reuters that said that Trump told Maduro, I should say, on November 21st, that he and his family had 1 week to leave the country. This is reported by Reuters. Trump administration hasn't commented on it, to my knowledge, at least the last time I checked. That 1 week deadline that President Trump reportedly gave to Maduro, that's gone. That's come and gone. So how do you analyze this? What do you think Maduro's strategy is here? Is he daring Trump to come and take him out? Are things happening behind the scenes that we don't know about? How do you read that?
So the interesting thing to me on this is that Maduro is actually willing to listen to these things. And it sounds like it's been going on for weeks, if not months. So he's actually talking to them about stepping down. I think the reported deal was that he would agree to step down at a certain point of time, but he would remain in control of the military or something weird like that. And then we're like, okay,
that's what I think of when I think of stepping down.
You're right. I'm keeping all my guys with guns, but I'll totally step down. We'll go to Fiji or something. But yeah, the interesting thing to me is he's actually talking about it. So if he's not willing to, or if he doesn't see that his back is completely against the wall, he's not even going to talk about it. But clearly he sees that his back is against the wall, so they are negotiating.